that you're completely psycho managed to escape your attention?
Yeah, just a minor encounter with the shrew.
So you two are gonna help me tame the wild beast.
The mewling, Rampalian wretch herself.
For just one night, forget that you're completely wretched.
Heinous bitch is the term used most often.
Bitter, self-righteous hag.
Insane head case.
It's time to read like Cat Stratford. Hi besties, welcome. I hope you're doing well. I am very excited because I'm about to spend the next 2 weeks living vicariously through Cat Stratford of the 2000s iconic teen rom-com 10 Things I Hate About You. I've been watching this movie for years and years and years. One year I didn't go to my prom, so I just stayed home and watched 10 Things I Hate About You instead, and I will never regret that decision. I got to go to prom on my couch with Heath Ledger with ramen noodle hair. I win. We have hot Heath Ledger, we have badass Julia Stiles, we have baby Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and also this guy who I know as Bernard from the Santa Claus.
I have a dick on my face, don't I?
We have Allison Janney, a high school guidance counselor who in her spare time is trying to write erotica.
Quivering member. I like that.
We have Paolo from Princess Diaries.
I want you to wear the belly.
We literally have everyone we need to make this an iconic teen film, and on top of that, it is adapted from Shakespeare. Everything about that, give it to me right now. And I really appreciate the stances that it took, really flipping the script on old Willie Shakes, because he got this one wrong. She is truly one of the OG girl bosses, and this week I wanted to pay homage to her by taking all of the wonderful book recommendations that she gives us in this movie and then psychoanalyzing her to see if I think they fit, and if so, why. So that means that this week we are going to read a lot of Ernest Hemingway.
Hemingway? He was an abusive alcoholic misogynist who squandered half his life hanging around Picasso trying to nail his leftovers.
Okay, so we won't read any Hemingway. What do you suggest?
What about Sylvia Plath, or Charlotte Bronte, or Simone de Beauvoir?
Okay, got it, Kat. But let's get into the books. In terms of Charlotte Bronte, I'm gonna read the classic Jane Eyre, which I've never read before, and I'm very excited to read, but also a little bit daunted by because it is a pretty thick thick woman. All I know is that Jane Eyre is like an orphan. It kind of follows her throughout her life, and I think the main portion of it happens when she's like a nanny. Governess. She's like a governess, and then she falls in love with somebody. I think there's a romance, but I also know that it's a very important text in terms of feminism in fiction. I'm excited to see how Charlotte Bronte explores feminism and also to see how it's changed since then. Kat also mentions Simone de Beauvoir. First, I have The Woman Destroyed. From what I understand, this is 3 short stories. They each follow a different woman in sort of the later parts of their lives as opposed to their youth. The second Simone de Beauvoir that I have is A Very Easy Death. This is very short, and it's a memoir about, I think, the period of time after her mother died. So I think it's giving like The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion vibes in terms of it's just a memoir about grief. I like reading about grief. That's probably weird, but I do because grief is just really complex and layered, and it's hard to wrap my head around sometimes. And then Kat talks about Miss Sylvia Plath. I do have the book that Kat reads throughout the entire movie and Sylvia Plath's magnum opus, The Bell Jar. I have read The Bell Jar before. I read it, I think, last year, and I wanted to throw up the entire time I read it because it was very difficult to read. That meme that's like, I see myself in this picture and I don't like it, that's me when I read this book. I can already see why Kat likes this one since I've read it, but excited to talk more about it later. Last but not least, this is not a book that Kat recommends, but it is the play that the movie is based on. I am going to be reading Taming of the Shrew. I've actually never read this play before. I've seen it performed, but it's been a while, and so I know the loose plot, but I'm excited to read it and see how faithful the adaptation is in 10 Things and at what important points it diverges from the original. I know there's some really shitty sexist plot points in this play. I do think this play is pretty anti-woman. So I'm excited to read it because it's Shakespeare, and I always have fun when I read Shakespeare, but I am not under any delusion that I will particularly love this play. It's a comedy, so let's see if I laugh at beating a woman until she submits to her husband Anyway, that's all the books I'm reading. I feel like I'm reading a lot for this one, but it's because I'm so excited and I really love Kat, and also I just want to read from some women. Also, really quickly, the music of today's video is made by one of my very best friends, Wes. I'm so grateful he's letting me use his music in my videos. Wes, I love you. Please get a SoundCloud so that I can link you. So yeah, I'm gonna read like Kat. I'm gonna listen to music like Kat would. I'm probably gonna go to Bogey Lowenstein's party, and hopefully I'll destroy some of his mother's prized possessions. I can't wait to get into it, so let's fucking get into it.
Nightmare just happened and somebody knocked on my door, but I really liked the first story in this, The Age of Discretion. I highlighted a whole bunch of stuff. I really like her writing style. It's very kind of to the point, but there's something that's just like special about it. Very happy with it. Now I'm going to read the last story in the Woman Destroyed, which is the titular story, The Woman Destroyed. I finished monologue yesterday and I didn't like it. 1 for 2 so far. Hopefully I'll like this one. Overall, oh my god, an overall positive experience. Okay, so Jane Eyre update. I'm about 250 pages in, and I'm really liking it. I'm in the scene where Jane has to go take care of this man who's basically bleeding out. He said she sucked the blood. She said she drained my heart. And I'm just saying, I bet Armie Hammer would be a fan of this book. I finally finished Jane Eyre. It took me so long, like a million years. Overall, I liked it. I do think Charlotte Bronte could have edited a little bit more, cut back a little bit. Didn't think it needed to be 520 pages, although I think very few books need to be 520 pages, but I'm glad that I read it. Anyway, now I'm moving on to Very Easy Death by Simone de Beauvoir, because after Jane Eyre, I needed like a skinny legend. I have finished A Very Easy Death. A Very Easy Death is very difficult, but also really lovely. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but just her prose is so beautiful, and her honesty about grief was really admirable. Like, I wish I could be that honest in times of crisis. But for now, I'm gonna go to bed. It is a beautiful day outside, and I realize that this is just how I exist now, in my comfy, in my hammock, in my clout goggles, reading. And honestly, that's checking every box that I need to be checked in my life, so I'm not complaining. And if you do, then you're anti-woman, and it's Women's History Month. I finished The Bell Jar, but this time, because I was more familiar with it, it wasn't quite as nausea-inducing, but it did give me a raging headache and ruin my day. That being said, I do love that book very dearly. Now the only thing left to read is The Taming of the Shrew. Usually I'm like jazzed to read Shakespeare, but I do know that this one is pretty sexist. So we'll see. Even if that man is William Shakespeare, I will not let a man ruin the beautiful day that is happening outside by being sexist. I will simply not let that happen. Bye now.
Am I cat yet? I've read a big old stack of Cat Stratford's favorite books. Also, I didn't realize that this video would coincide with the beginning of Women's History Month, but honestly so true, because of all of the historical women I most wish to emulate, Cat Stratford is near the top of the list. That many pages just to see if Cat Stratford is really as edgy and feminist as she says she is. Let's jump in. I picked up The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir. This was the collection of 3 short stories, each about a woman aging and what that means in each of their individual lives. This book I had mixed feelings about, because the first story in this book I really loved. The first short story is just a lot about the way as a woman ages she becomes disconnected with her body and with pleasure, because we're told all the time that our bodies are the thing of value in our lives instead of our thoughts and our opinions and our feelings. It's kind of an exploration of what happens when you no longer have that same conventional beauty, and how you look at yourself as a woman when those things that society deems valuable have been kind of stripped from you. And then the second one is called The Monologue, and that one definitely taps more into female rage and like the anger of aging. I didn't vibe with that one as much, which seems impossible because female rage is all the rage. Female rage is my jam, but the writing style of it, I just found it really difficult to focus on because it's very stream of consciousness. To me, it just wasn't as compelling, but I do love this line. I used to like the moon. It was like me, and they've mucked it up like they muck everything up. They were revolting, those photos. A dreary, grayish, dusty thing anyone at all can trample about on. And then the third one is more written in the style of diary entries over about a year, maybe a few months, in which a woman finds out that her husband of 14 years has been cheating on her. She's grappling with whether she should stay with him and the difficult balance between the fact that she loves him and relies on him, but also loves and relies on herself and her self-respect. The Age of Discretion was the first story, and that was definitely my favorite. I do think this was a really great introduction to Simone de Beauvoir because it gave me 3 different tastes of her writing style, because they were all written very differently. There's a very simple but poetic way about her writing. She's very to the point and she doesn't shy away from what she's trying to say, but she also says it in a way that's very disarming and beautiful, and I really enjoyed this. Kat would absolutely read this. Next up, I read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. It's not a new favorite, but I did enjoy it. I really enjoyed the time I spent with it. Like, I liked waking up in the morning and knowing that I had more Jane Eyre to read. I know that it has like really dark elements, but it made me feel like I feel when I read Jane Austen in the Regency period, and I don't think this is, I don't know what, we all know I don't know what these dates and timelines are. I have no idea. I never will. I'm not even gonna try. But it makes me feel like I should cross stitch and learn how to play a pianoforte. But I do think that this book was absolutely revolutionary at the time it was written. It is so much centered around a woman who is trying to live for herself, and as an equal to the men around her, she's trying to make her own decisions about what will make her happy, and she refuses to rely on a man. Look, Mr. Rochester low-key invented gaslighting and gatekeeping. He gaslights Jane the entire book because he doesn't tell. Spoiler alert if you haven't read this book from the 1840s. Mr. Rochester, the man she's falling in love with, he is hiding his like psycho crazy wife in the attic and then asks Jane to marry him. Well, that is not how that works, Mr. Rochester, because you're already married to Bertha. She's in the attic. You probably hear her scratching right now to get out. So he's literally gaslighting Jane, and then he's also gatekeeping Bertha because he's keeping her in the attic behind a gate. Mr. Rochester is a crazy motherfucker. That being said, the fact that she goes back to him later, it did tug at my heartstrings a little. Would I go back to that man? Never. But reading it, was I touched? Kind of. And also Mr. Rochester sort of redeemed himself. I was about to say he sort of redeemed himself by trying to save Bertha from dying, and that redeemed him from putting her in the attic for like 10 years. It didn't, but kind of sweet that he didn't want her to die. He's doing the bare minimum. At one point, Jane goes somewhere else and she meets these people, and there's like a hot guy there, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, Jane, get this man. Gaslighter, fuck you, I'm gonna go find a hot man, because they say through the whole book Mr. Rochester's an uggo, and then turns out hot man is her cousin. Well, damn it, never mind, Jane. I know it's of the time, but I really thought that put him out of the running. But then hot man asks her to marry him. But overall, I liked it. The classic line from Jane Eyre, the iconic line from Jane Eyre, I am no bird and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will, which I now exert to leave you. That is honestly such a fucking burn. Anyway, totally get why Kat loves this, because it truly is a classic that really goes against most of the patriarchal values that were rampant at this time, and has definitely paved the way for other books like it. Then I read A Very Easy Death by Simone de Beauvoir, which is some nonfiction. This is a very short memoir about the 4 weeks in which her mother got sick and was dying. Just how she and her family members dealt with that grief. It was such an interesting and difficult exploration into the different complex layers of grief, and how grief never comes in one emotion. Grief is just so many different things at once. If you're grieving, this either could be a helpful tool in remembering that you're not alone and sort of sorting out some of those feelings, or it could be very triggering and difficult. So you make that call. Because Kat deals with the loss of a mother, even though Kat's mother left, I do think this could be something that really rings true to her. The prose of it screams Kat. Then I reread The Bell Jar. This time I was able to get through it a little bit faster and with a little bit more detachment, because I knew it was coming and thus could steel myself. This book was a game changer in terms of literature exploring women grappling with mental illness and suicide and assault, all of these different things that our main character Esther goes through. Sylvia Plath doesn't sugarcoat a single sentence of this novel. She continuously conveys to a reader exactly what it feels like to be in this bell jar. It will always have a place in the American canon and in the feminist canon. That being said, there are issues in terms of the way that she talks about race. I found a really great Instagram post about this book specifically on the Instagram account Black Stacks. Overall, I just think this book is very special, and it's a book that has made me feel less alone. And even though it definitely has some problematic elements, I think that it also has really valuable things to say, and both of those things can be true. This line, I don't see what women see in other women, I told Dr. Nolan in my interview that noon. What does a woman see in a woman that she can't see in a man? Dr. Nolan paused. Then she said, tenderness. That shut me up. Oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. And last but not least, I read The Taming of the Shrew by one Mr. William Shakespeare. I found an audiobook of this that had a full cast, and it was so great, so helpful. I found it at my library for free. Definitely recommend, if you're trying to read Shakespeare, to maybe read along with an audiobook that has a cast of actors. I think it will be so helpful to understanding text that you've maybe never approached before. This is one of my least favorite Shakespeare plays I've ever read. It's so unbelievably sexist, which I knew going in. and I've seen productions of it before and I know that, but they literally treat Kat like a dog and they withhold food from her and they beat her into submission until she's an obedient, loving wife. It's funny, I won't lie. The wordplay and the banter in this one is next level. Other than that, it can choke, and I do genuinely believe that 10 Things I Hate About You is better than this play written by William Shakespeare. I believe it with my whole heart. Anyway, now we're done. Now we're boss-ass, punk, feminist, shrew, mewling, Rampalian wretch bitches. And I think we're all better for it. Like this video if you liked it, comment down below what your favorite teen rom-com is, and tell me what fictional character you want me to read like next. My Goodreads, Instagram, and Storygraph are all linked down below, and we can talk on any or all of those platforms. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. We're so close to 10K, and it would absolutely make my day if you were one of the people that helped me reach that goal. I burn, I pine, I perish. And in case you haven't heard it today, I love you. Bye.